Commander Veltaran stood at the wide window of the command deck. His forearms were crossed behind his back as he watched the blue and green planet spin slowly below. The planet looked peaceful from space. No one would guess that a war was about to begin down there. "Commander," a voice called from behind him. Veltaran turned his large head to see Captain Nexdal walking toward him. The captain's silver uniform was clean and pressed like always. "Hi, Admiral Kexthal wants to see you right away." Veltaran nodded. He had been expecting this call. For 3 days he had watched the hegemony fleet move into position around the human planet. Everyone knew what came next. The humans would be given one chance to surrender. When they refused, the real work would begin. The walk to the Admiral's office took 5 minutes through the ship's long metal halls. Soldiers and crew members stepped aside as Veltaran passed. His rank as a scientific corps commander meant something on a hegemony warship. He was not just another soldier. He was an observer, a recorder of facts. High Admiral Kexthal was standing behind his desk when Veltaran entered. The Admiral was old even for their species. His gray skin had deep lines and his yellow eyes had seen many battles. On the wall behind him hung the flags of 50 conquered worlds. "Veltaran," the Admiral said without looking up from his datapad. "You know why you are here." "I assume it has to do with the humans below, sir." Kexthal finally looked up. His mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "Yes, the humans, such a young species. They have been in space for less than 200 years. Their weapons are simple. Their ships are slow. And yet—" The Admiral walked around his desk. He moved to a large screen on the wall and touched it. The screen showed images of the human colony below. Small buildings made of metal and stone were scattered across a valley. Machines dug into the ground, pulling out valuable minerals. "This colony has been here for 30 years, Kexthal continued. "They mine rare metals that we need for our ships. We offered to buy these metals from them. We offered to trade. We even offered to make them part of our empire. They said no to everything." Veltaran studied the images. The human buildings looked weak compared to hegemony structures. Their vehicles were crude. Their defensive weapons seemed like toys. "They do not appear to be much of a threat, sir." "Exactly." Kexthal turned back to him. "Which is why you are here. The Science Council wants a complete record of how humans fight. They want to know their tactics, their weapons, their weaknesses. When we fight other human colonies in the future, we will know what to expect." The Admiral handed Veltaran a small device. It looked like a simple metal disc, but Veltaran knew it contained the most advanced recording technology in the galaxy. It could capture everything he saw, heard, and even felt during battle. "You will go down to the planet's surface," Kexthal said. "Your cloaking device will keep you hidden. You will watch everything and record it all. The Science Council especially wants to see how humans react when they face certain death. Do they run? Do they surrender? Do they fight uselessly until the end?" Veltaran took the device and clipped it to his uniform. "How long do you expect this to take, sir?" Kexthal laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "The humans have maybe 3,000 people in that colony. Half of them are civilians. The other half are basic soldiers with simple weapons. We have 20,000 troops, battle mechs, and air support. I give them 6 hours after we land, and if they surrender, then your job will be very short and very boring." The Admiral walked back to his desk. "But humans are proud. Stupid, but proud. They will probably try to fight. When they do, you will see why the hegemony rules the galaxy and species like them serve us." Veltaran left the Admiral's office with his orders clear in his mind. He was to observe, record, and learn. Nothing more. He was not a soldier in this battle. He was a scientist gathering data. His ship was small and fast. It could carry only one person, but it had the best cloaking technology the hegemony could build. As he flew down toward the planet, his sensors told him everything about the human defenses. They had some anti-aircraft guns, but they were old models. They had some energy shields around their main buildings, but they were weak. They had soldiers, but their weapons could barely scratch hegemony armor. Veltaran landed his ship in a forest 2 kilometers from the human colony. His cloaking field would hide the ship from any human sensors. He activated his personal cloaking device and began walking toward the settlement. The first thing he noticed was how quiet everything was. Birds sang in the trees. A small stream ran past his feet. The air smelled of growing plants and clean water. It was hard to believe that war was coming to this peaceful place. As he got closer to the human colony, he could see people moving around. They were smaller than his species, with only 2 arms and 2 legs. Their skin came in different colors, from very light to very dark. Some had hair on their heads that was black, brown, yellow, or red. Veltarin climbed a hill that gave him a good view of the entire colony. He took out a pair of enhanced viewing devices and looked more closely at the humans below. They seemed to be preparing for something. Groups of soldiers were checking weapons and equipment. Civilians were loading supplies into vehicles. Through his viewing device, he watched 2 humans talking near what looked like a command post. One was wearing a green uniform with marks that showed he was important. The other was smaller and wore similar clothes but with different marks. That must be their leaders, Veltarin said to himself as he adjusted his recording device. The larger human looked confident as he pointed to different parts of the colony. The smaller one nodded and asked questions. Neither of them looked afraid, which surprised Veltarin. Did they not understand what was coming? A loud sound filled the air. Veltarin looked up to see the first hegemony dropships breaking through the clouds. They were huge metal boxes that could carry 500 soldiers each. Their engines roared like thunder as they fell toward the planet. The humans below began moving faster. Soldiers ran to their positions. Civilians hurried toward bunkers and safe buildings. But Veltarin noticed something strange. No one was screaming. No one seemed to panic. They moved with purpose, like they had practiced this many times. The first dropships landed in a field outside the colony. Their doors opened with loud crashes and hegemony troops poured out. Even from his hiding place, Veltarin could see how much bigger and stronger the hegemony soldiers were compared to the humans. Their armor was thick and black. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. More ships landed. Soon, thousands of hegemony troops were forming lines in the field. There, battle mechs stomped down from larger ships. The mechs were 10 meters tall and armed with weapons that could destroy buildings. Veltarin watched a human soldier standing on top of a wall around the colony. The soldier was looking at the massive army gathering outside. Even through his viewing device, Veltarin could see that the human understood how hopeless the situation was. 1 human against 20 hegemony soldiers. Old weapons against new ones. A small colony against a galactic empire. But the human did not run. He did not call for surrender. Instead, he picked up a communication device and spoke into it. Veltarin could not hear the words, but he could see the result. All around the colony, more human soldiers took their positions. They checked their weapons one last time. They looked out at the enemy army that was about to attack them. And they stayed. Veltarin felt something he had not expected. It was not quite respect, but it was close. These humans knew they could not win. They knew they were about to die. But they were going to fight anyway. He adjusted his recording device and settled in to watch. High Admiral Kexthul had said this would take 6 hours. Veltarin began to wonder if the Admiral was right. These humans seemed different from the reports he had read. They seemed determined. The first battle was about to begin, and Commander Veltarin was ready to record every moment of it. The night changed everything. Veltarin had expected the hegemony forces to regroup and attack again with overwhelming force. That was how wars were supposed to work. The stronger army kept pushing until the weaker one broke. But as darkness fell over the human colony, a different kind of battle began. The humans did not wait for morning. While hegemony troops set up camps around the colony, human soldiers slipped out through hidden tunnels. They moved through the forest like ghosts, appearing and disappearing so quickly that the hegemony sensors could barely track them. Veltarin followed one group as they crawled through tall grass toward a hegemony supply depot. The group was led by a woman who looked like she might have been a teacher before this war started. Her name tag said "So Young." She was small and quiet, but the soldiers with her followed her orders without question. So Young held up her hand, and the group stopped. Moving. She pointed to 2 guards standing near the supply depot. Her soldiers nodded and spread out. What happened next took less than 30 seconds. 2 human soldiers appeared behind the guards like shadows. The guards were unconscious before they could call for help. So Young and her team ran into the depot, placed explosive charges on the ammunition supplies, and disappeared back into the darkness. The explosion lit up the night sky. But by then the humans were already gone. This same scene played out all around the hegemony positions. Supply depots exploded. Communication towers were destroyed. Transport vehicles were sabotaged. The humans were not fighting a big battle anymore. They were fighting 100 small battles. Veltarin tried to follow different human groups, but it was almost impossible. They moved too fast and knew the land too well. He found himself recording mostly the results of their attacks, not the attacks themselves. By morning, the hegemony forces had lost 30% of their supplies. Their communication network was damaged. Several of their mechs had been disabled by explosives placed under their feet during the night. But what impressed Veltarin most was not the damage the humans had done. It was how they had organized everything while still protecting their own people. He watched So Young meet with other group leaders in an underground bunker. The bunker was full of human civilians, old people, women, children. They had been moved there during the night while the soldiers fought above ground. A little girl, maybe 12 years old, was running between the adult leaders. Her name was Nari, and she seemed to be carrying messages. Veltarin was shocked. The humans were using a child as part of their military operations, but as he watched more closely, he understood. Nari was not being forced to help. She had volunteered, and she was very good at it. She was small enough to move through spaces adults could not use. She was fast and quiet, and she knew every tunnel and hiding place in the colony better than anyone else. The northern group needs more explosives, Nari told So Young. Kyungsu says he can hold the ridge for 3 more hours if we get him ammunition. So Young nodded. Tell him the ammunition is coming, but he needs to be ready to fall back when we give the signal. We cannot afford to lose our best sniper. Veltarin had heard of this Kyungsu. He was the human who had been shooting hegemony soldiers from long distance. His shots were so accurate that entire groups of troops had to take cover when they knew he was watching them. Nari ran off to deliver the message. So Young turned to another soldier, a man named Haiwan, who seemed to be an expert with explosives. The main power station is ready, Haiwan reported. If we need to actually destroy it this time, we can do it in less than 5 minutes. But So Young, if we do that, we lose power for the civilian shelters too. So Young was quiet for a moment. Then she said, the civilians come first, always. We will find another way to stop the next attack. Veltarin recorded this conversation, but he found it hard to understand. These humans were fighting a war where they could not win. They knew they could not win. But they kept making plans like victory was possible, and they were willing to sacrifice military advantages to protect people who could not fight. It made no sense from a military perspective, but it made perfect sense from a human perspective. The next hegemony attack came at midday. This time, the hegemony commander had learned from the previous day's mistakes. Instead of sending troops into the colony where they could be trapped, he decided to destroy it from a distance. Artillery units set up on the hills around the colony. Their weapons were powerful enough to level every building in the settlement. The attack would kill military and civilian targets alike, but it would guarantee victory. Veltarin watched the first shells fly toward the colony. The explosions were massive, throwing dirt and stones high into the air. Buildings that had stood for 30 years were destroyed in seconds. But something was wrong. The explosions seemed too small for what should have been direct hits, and there were no human screams. No signs of mass casualties. After an hour of bombardment, the hegemony commander sent scout drones to assess the damage. The drones found destroyed buildings and huge craters in the ground, but they found very few human bodies. Somehow, the humans had evacuated most of the colony during the night. They had moved their people and their important equipment into the underground tunnel system, while leaving just enough soldiers above ground to make it look like the colony was still fully occupied. The hegemony artillery had been firing at an almost empty settlement, Beltaran realized he was watching a master class in military deception. The humans had tricked a vastly superior enemy into wasting time and ammunition attacking the wrong targets. But where had all the humans gone? He found his answer when Kyung-Soo made his next attack. The human sniper was not firing from the colony anymore. He was shooting from a cave system in the mountains 2 kilometers away. And he was not alone. From his new position, Beltaran could see human soldiers spread out across the mountainside. They had moved their entire defense force to higher ground, while making the enemy think they were still trapped in the valley. Now the hegemony troops would have to attack uphill, through difficult terrain, against an enemy that knew every rock and tree. The humans had turned their retreat into an advantage. Kyung-Soo fired again. His shot hit a hegemony officer from 800 meters away. The officer's armor saved his life, but he would not be fighting for several days. More shots came from different positions. The humans were not trying to kill as many enemies as possible. They were targeting leaders, communication specialists, and technical experts. Every shot made the hegemony force a little less organized. Beltaran watched a group of hegemony soldiers trying to advance up a steep slope. They moved slowly, their heavy armor making them clumsy on the rocky ground. Human defenders above them rolled large stones down the mountainside. The stones did not kill anyone, but they forced the attackers to dodge and stumble. What should have been a 10-minute climb took 2 hours, and while those soldiers struggled up one slope, other human groups attacked hegemony positions elsewhere. So Young led a raid on the artillery units. Her team disabled 3 big guns before disappearing back into the mountains. Nari continued to run messages between human groups. Beltaran watched the 12-year-old girl climb through passages that grown adults could not fit through. She carried information that helped coordinate attacks across the entire battlefield. The little human was risking her life to help her people fight. She was too young to carry a gun, but she was old enough to be brave. By evening, the hegemony forces had advanced less than 500 meters up the mountainside. They had lost more equipment and taken more casualties than in any battle Beltaran had ever observed. And the humans were still fighting. As night fell again, Beltaran found himself in a strange position. He was supposed to be recording human weaknesses for future hegemony victories. Instead, he was recording human strengths that were making this victory much harder than anyone had expected. For the first time in his career, Commander Beltaran began to wonder if the hegemony had chosen the wrong enemy to fight. These humans were not going to surrender. They were not going to run away. And they were definitely not going to make this easy. The war was just beginning. The attack began at dawn. Beltaran watched through his viewing device as the hegemony forces moved forward like a dark wave. Their battle mechs walked in front, their massive feet shaking the ground. Behind them came thousands of soldiers in perfect lines. It should have been over quickly. The humans had built walls around their colony, but the walls were only 3 meters high. The hegemony mechs were 10 meters tall. Their weapons could punch through the strongest metal like it was paper. But the first surprise came when the mechs were still 100 meters from the walls. The ground under the lead mech suddenly gave way. The massive machine fell into a deep pit that had been hidden under fake dirt and grass. The mech tried to climb out, but the pit was too deep and too narrow. It was trapped. Clever, Beltaran said to himself as he recorded. The humans had been busy during the night. The second mech moved around the pit and kept walking toward the wall. It raised its main weapon and fired at the nearest human defense post. The energy beam hit the wall and exploded, sending pieces of stone flying everywhere. But when the smoke cleared, the wall was still there. The humans had built their defenses stronger than they looked. More mechs spread out and began firing at different parts of the wall. Their weapons lit up the morning sky with deadly colors. The humans fired back with their smaller guns, but their shots barely scratched the mech armor. Beltaran moved closer to get a better view. His cloaking device kept him invisible, but he could hear the sounds of battle clearly now. The deep roar of hegemony weapons, the sharp crack of human guns, the shouts of soldiers on both sides. He watched a young human soldier running along the top of the wall. The soldier was carrying extra ammunition to his friends. Hegemony energy beams flew past him, close enough to burn his clothes. But he did not slow down. He reached a gun position where two other humans were firing at the attacking mechs. The young soldier's name tag said Minho. He looked very young, maybe only 20 years old. His face was dirty and scared, but his hands were steady as he helped load the big gun. A hegemony mech turned its weapons toward Minho's position. Veltaran watched the energy cannon charge up, its barrel glowing brighter and brighter. The mech was only 50 meters away. At that distance, nothing could survive a direct hit. Minho saw the danger too. He could have run. The gun position had an escape route that led down into the colony, but instead of running, Minho pushed his two friends toward the escape route. "Go," he shouted at them. "I will keep it busy." His friends did not want to leave him, but Minho pushed them again. "Someone has to work the gun." The two soldiers ran for safety just as the mech fired. The energy beam hit the gun position and turned it into a ball of flame. Veltaran was sure Minho was dead, but when the smoke cleared, he saw the young human behind the remains of the gun. He was hurt, and his uniform was torn, but he was alive, and he was still fighting. Minho had found a rocket launcher from somewhere. He stood up, aimed it at the mech, and fired. The rocket was small compared to the mech, but Minho aimed well. It hit the mech's weapon arm at the joint where the armor was thinnest. The explosion damaged the arm and made the mech step back. More rockets flew from other positions along the wall. The humans were not trying to destroy the mechs completely. They were aiming for weak spots, weapon joints, sensor arrays, leg pistons. Each hit made the mechs a little less dangerous. Veltaran recorded everything, but he found himself focusing on individual humans instead of the big picture, like the medic named Yunji, who ran out into the open to help wounded soldiers. Energy beams flew all around her, but she dragged 3 injured humans to safety before a mech could target her. Or the engineer called Tae-min, who was doing something very strange. Instead of fighting, he was running between buildings with tools and equipment. Veltaran watched him work on the colony's main power station. What was he doing? The battle had been going on for 2 hours now. The hegemony forces had broken through the wall in 3 places, but they were not advancing as fast as expected. Every building in the colony had become a fortress. Every street corner had human soldiers with guns. Veltaran followed a group of hegemony troops as they entered the colony. They moved in perfect formation, their armor gleaming, their weapons ready. They expected to find scared civilians hiding in basements. Instead, they found prepared soldiers waiting for them. The first building they entered seemed empty. The hegemony troops spread out to search it room by room. But as soon as they were all inside, explosions went off. The building's support beams had been rigged with charges. The roof came down on the attacking soldiers. It was not enough to kill them. Their armor was too strong, but it trapped them under heavy stones and metal. They would need help to get out, and help would take time. The same thing happened at the next building, and the next. The humans were not trying to kill the hegemony troops directly. They were slowing them down, separating them, making them work for every meter. Veltaran realized he was watching something he had never seen before. He had observed many battles where strong armies fought weak ones. Usually the weak army either ran away or tried to fight in the open and died quickly. But these humans were doing something different. They were using their weakness as a weapon. Every time a hegemony soldier had to stop and help a trapped friend, that was one less soldier attacking. Every time a mech had to be careful not to step in a hidden pit, it moved slower. Every time the humans made the battle take longer, more hegemony resources were used up. But the humans were paying a price too. Veltaran watched Minho trying to reload his rocket launcher, while 3 hegemony soldiers advanced on his position. The young human's hands were shaking now, and blood ran down his face from a head wound. He was alone and surrounded. The hegemony soldiers raised their weapons. Minho closed his eyes and waited for the end. The end came, but not the way anyone expected. Engineer Tae-min had finished his work on the power station. He activated something, and suddenly every light in the colony went out. Then they came back on, but much brighter than before. The power grid was overloading. "Attention all hegemony forces," a voice said over loudspeakers throughout the colony. It spoke in perfect hegemony language with a calm, clear accent. This is Colonel Jaewook of the Human Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to evacuate this facility before we release all stored energy at once. This will destroy the colony and everything in it, including your troops. Veltaran felt his heart skip a beat. The humans were going to destroy their own colony rather than let it be. Captured? The hegemony commander's voice came over the radio channels. Human commander, you are bluffing. You would not destroy your own people. 20 seconds, came the reply. Veltaran could see hegemony soldiers looking around nervously. They had been trained to fight enemies who wanted to live. What do you do when your enemy is willing to die to stop you? 15 seconds. Some hegemony troops began moving toward the exits. Others stayed in position waiting for orders. 10 seconds. More soldiers started running. 5 seconds. At the last moment, the hegemony commander gave the order. All troops, withdraw immediately. Fall back to safe distance. The evacuation was chaos. Soldiers ran in all directions. Mechs crashed into each other trying to get away. The perfect hegemony formation fell apart completely. But when 30 seconds passed, nothing happened. The power stayed on. The colony did not explode. It had been a bluff. But it had worked. Veltaran realized his mouth was hanging open. In less than 3 hours he had watched a tiny human force stop the advance of a vastly superior army. Not through strength, but through cleverness. Not through better weapons, but through better thinking. And they were not done yet. As the confused hegemony troops tried to regroup outside the colony, the humans began their counterattack. Small groups of soldiers slipped out of hidden exits and moved through the forest. They carried explosive devices toward the landed hegemony ships. For the first time since arriving at this planet, Commander Veltaran began to wonder if High Admiral Kexthul had made a mistake. Maybe this battle would not be over in 6 hours. After all, maybe these humans were more dangerous than anyone had imagined. 7 days had passed since the attack began. High Admiral Kexthul had said it would take 6 hours, but the humans were still fighting. Veltaran crouched behind a rocky outcrop, watching the final hegemony assault preparations. Reinforcements had arrived from orbit. Fresh troops, new weapons, heavier mechs. The Admiral was not taking any more chances with these humans. This time there would be no retreat, no regrouping, no clever tactics. This time the hegemony would use overwhelming force to crush the human resistance once and for all. But as Veltaran adjusted his recording device, he heard something that made his blood freeze. Footsteps behind him. Slow, deliberate footsteps that stopped just outside his cloaking field. "You can come out now," said a calm voice in perfect hegemony language. "We know you are there." Veltaran's heart hammered in his chest. His cloaking device was supposed to be invisible to human technology. How had they found him? "We are not going to hurt you," the voice continued. "We just want to talk." Slowly, Veltaran deactivated his cloaking field. He stood up and turned around. A human man was standing 5 meters away. He was older than the soldiers Veltaran had been watching, with gray hair and lines around his eyes. His uniform was different too, with more rank marks. This had to be their top commander. "General Wu Jin," the human said, introducing himself. "And you are Commander Veltaran of the Hegemony Scientific Corps." Veltaran's mouth fell open. "How do you know my name?" Wu Jin smiled, but it was not a happy expression. "We have known about you since the first day. Your cloaking device hides you from most sensors, but not all of them. We have been watching you watch us." Other humans appeared from behind rocks and trees. They had been surrounding Veltaran without him knowing it. But their weapons were lowered, not pointed at him. "Why have you not killed me?" Veltaran asked. "Because we are not the monsters your leaders think we are," Wu Jin replied. "And because we have something to show you. Something your admiral needs to see." The human general gestured for Veltaran to follow him. Against his better judgment, the hegemony commander walked beside the human up a narrow mountain path. They climbed for 20 minutes before reaching a hidden entrance in the cliff face. Inside was a large cave that had been turned into a command center. Electronic equipment lined the walls. Maps and battle plans covered every surface. But what caught Veltaran's attention were the people. The cave was full of human civilians. Hundreds of them. Old people sitting on blankets, women holding babies, children playing quiet games in the corners. These were not soldiers. These were the families the soldiers had been protecting. "This is what your war is really about," Wu Jin said quietly. "These people, the miners and farmers and teachers who just wanted to live in peace. The children who have never hurt anyone." Veltarin walked among the civilians, recording everything. Many of them looked up at him with curiosity rather than fear. A small child waved at him. An elderly woman offered him food from her small supply. "They are not afraid of me," Veltarin observed. "They should be," Wu Jin said. "You are here to help destroy their world. But we taught them that hate makes you weak. Fear makes you weak. They choose to stay strong." The general led Veltarin to another part of the cave. Here, wounded soldiers were being treated by medics. Veltarin recognized some of them from the battles he had watched. Minho was there, his arm in a sling, but still helping other patients. Hyunji was working on a badly injured soldier, her hands steady despite obvious exhaustion. "These are my fighters," Wu Jin said. "They have been holding off your army for a week with weapons that are 50 years older than yours. Do you know why?" Veltarin shook his head. "Because they are not fighting for conquest. They are not fighting for glory or resources or territory. They are fighting for the right to exist. And people will do impossible things when they fight for that." Wu Jin walked to a communication station and activated a screen. It showed the hegemony forces gathering for their final assault. Thousands of fresh troops, dozens of heavy mechs, artillery pieces that could level mountains. "Your admiral is preparing to kill every person in this cave," the general said. "Men, women, children, soldiers, civilians, everyone. He calls it acceptable casualties in his reports. What do you call it?" Veltarin stared at the screen. He had been thinking about this war as a military exercise, a test of tactics and weapons. But these people were not statistics. They were individuals with names and families and dreams. "I call it genocide," he said quietly. Wu Jin nodded. "So do we. Which brings me to why we brought you here." The general turned to face Veltarin directly. "You have been recording everything. Your admiral will see all of this when you return to your ship. What will you tell him about us?" It was a simple question, but Veltarin realized it was the most important question anyone had ever asked him. What would he tell them? That the humans were primitive savages who deserved to be conquered? That they were weak and cowardly? Or that they were brave and clever and determined to protect their families no matter the cost? "I will tell him the truth," Veltarin said finally. "Which truth?" Wu Jin asked. "The truth your leaders want to hear? Or the truth you have seen with your own eyes?" Before Veltarin could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the cave. A young soldier ran up to Wu Jin. "General, they are beginning the orbital bombardment. All civilian transports are ready to launch." Wu Jin turned back to Veltarin. "We saved one more thing to show you." The general led him to another screen. This one showed space above the planet. Veltarin could see the massive hegemony fleet in orbit, but he could also see something else. Small human ships were launching from hidden locations all over the planet. "Evacuation ships," Wu Jin explained. "We have been building them for months, hiding them in caves and underground facilities. Most of our people will escape before the bombardment destroys the surface." Veltarin counted the ships. "There are not enough. Many will have to stay behind." "Yes," Wu Jin said simply. "The soldiers will stay to cover the evacuation. We will hold the hegemony forces as long as possible to give our people time to reach safe distance. You are going to die. Probably. But our families will live. Our children will remember what happened here, and someday they will be strong enough to make sure it never happens again." The general handed Veltarin a small device. "This contains our complete records of the last week. Battle footage, casualty reports, evidence of everything your people have done here. Take it with you when you go." "Why?" "Because someone in your empire needs to see what really happened here. Someone needs to know that we were not the monsters in this story." Explosions began echoing through the cave as the orbital bombardment started. The mountain shook and dust fell from the ceiling. Civilian families began moving toward the escape tunnels. Wu Jin walked with them. "You should go now, Commander. Your cloaked ship can get you safely back to the fleet. But remember what you have seen here. Remember that we could have been friends instead of enemies." Veltaran looked around the cave one last time. He saw So Young helping elderly civilians toward the escape route. He saw little Nari carrying supplies for the evacuation. He saw Minho and other wounded soldiers refusing to leave with the civilians, choosing to stay and fight to the end. And he saw General Wu Jin, who could have saved himself but stayed, to make sure his people escaped safely. These were not the primitive savages described in hegemony reports. These were heroes. As Veltaran made his way back to his ship, the mountain exploded behind him. The final battle had begun. And he knew that when it was over, very few humans would be left alive on this planet, but their children would survive. And they would remember. Commander Veltaran activated his ship and flew back toward the hegemony fleet, carrying with him the most important recording of his career. The question was, what would he do with it? 10 years had passed since the battle at the human mining colony. Commander Veltaran sat in his private quarters aboard a hegemony research vessel, staring at 2 recording devices on his desk. One device contained his official report, the version he had given to High Admiral Kexthul. In that report, humans were described as a weak species that fought desperately but uselessly against superior hegemony forces. The report recommended continued expansion into human territory. The other device contained the real story, everything he had actually witnessed, the courage, the sacrifice, the impossible determination of people fighting for their right to exist. This device had never been submitted to Hegemony Command. For 10 years, Veltaran had lived with the weight of that decision. Every day he wondered if things might have been different if he had told the truth. If someone in the hegemony leadership had seen what humans were really capable of, maybe they would have chosen peace instead of war. Instead, the war had grown. A soft chime indicated someone was at his door. "Come in," he called. His assistant, Lieutenant Nexmore, entered with a data pad. "Commander, you asked to be informed of any developments in the human conflict zones." Veltaran took the pad and read the reports. They were not good. 3 more. Hegemony fleets had been destroyed in human space. 2 major colony worlds had fallen to human forces. The humans had developed new weapons, new ships, new tactics that no one had expected. "How many hegemony casualties this month?" he asked. 47,000 dead or missing, sir. The humans seem to be specifically targeting our command structures and supply lines, just like they did at the mining colony, Veltaran finished quietly. But there was more in the reports. Much more. The human evacuation ships from the first battle had not simply disappeared. They had found other human colonies and shared their experiences. They had trained new fighters. They had spread the word about hegemony tactics and weaknesses. Most importantly, they had remembered. Veltaran scrolled through the casualty lists and stopped at one name. Captain Nari Kim, Human Defense Force. Little Nari, the 12-year-old girl who had carried messages through underground tunnels. She was 22 now, and commanding her own ship in battles against hegemony fleets. Another name caught his attention. General Sujin Wu, commanding, officer, Human Liberation Fleet, General Wu Jin's daughter. She had been evacuated as a child and had grown up to lead the largest human military force in the galaxy. The children who had escaped that mountain cave were now adults. And they were winning a war that the hegemony had started. Veltaran activated his personal communication system and sent a coded message to a contact in human space. It was risky. Treason, really. But he had been sending intelligence to human forces for 3 years now. Small things at first. Fleet movements, supply schedules, weakness in hegemony defenses. It was his way of trying to balance the scales. His way of making up for the report he should have given 10 years ago. His contact responded quickly. The message was short. "Package delivered, children remember. Thank you, friend." Veltaran smiled sadly. The children were human leaders who still remembered his recordings from the first battle. They used his intelligence to protect human civilians during hegemony attacks just as their parents had protected them. The door chimed again. This time it was a message from Fleet Command. High Admiral Kexthul wanted to see him immediately. Veltarin walked through the ship's corridors with a heavy feeling in his chest. He had been expecting this summons for weeks. Intelligence officers had been investigating leaks of military information to human forces. It was only a matter of time before they traced the leaks back to him. The Admiral's office looked exactly the same as it had 10 years ago. The same flags from conquered worlds. The same arrogant expression on Kexthul's face. But there were new lines of stress around the Admiral's eyes. The human war was not going as planned. Veltarin, the Admiral said without looking up from his reports. I have been reading your analysis of human fighting capabilities. Very interesting. Thank you, sir. According to your official report, humans are primitive fighters who rely on desperate tactics when cornered. Their technology is inferior. Their strategies are predictable. Kexthul finally looked up. So why are we losing this war? Veltarin had practiced this conversation many times in his mind. Humans appear to learn quickly from their mistakes, sir, and they have had 10 years to study our tactics. 10 years during which they have somehow acquired advanced weapons technology. 10 years during which they have demonstrated strategic planning that seems far beyond what your report suggested they were capable of. The Admiral stood up and walked around his desk. Tell me, Commander, is there anything you left out of your original report? This was the moment. Veltarin could continue the lie and probably avoid suspicion. Or he could finally tell the truth, knowing it would likely cost him his life. He thought about Minho, standing alone against impossible odds. He thought about So Young, risking everything to save civilians. He thought about General Wu Jin, choosing to die so his people could live. If humans could be that brave, maybe he could be brave too. Yes, sir, Veltarin said quietly. I left out quite a lot. The Admiral's expression darkened. Explain. The humans were not primitive or desperate, sir. They were brilliant. They used tactics I had never seen before. They fought not just to win, but to protect their families. And they were willing to sacrifice everything for that protection. Kexthul was very still. Are you telling me that you have been lying in your reports for 10 years? I am telling you that I made a mistake 10 years ago. I thought the truth would not be believed. I thought my career was more important than honesty. Veltarin reached into his uniform and pulled out the second recording device. This contains what really happened at the mining colony. Everything I actually witnessed. The Admiral took the device and placed it on his desk without activating it. And what do you think I should do with this information now, Commander? I think you should watch it, sir. I think you should see what we are really fighting. And then I think you should consider whether this is a war we can win. The hegemony does not surrender, Veltarin. No, sir. But maybe the hegemony could learn to make peace. For a long moment, the two officers stared at each other. Then the Admiral activated his communication system. Security to my office immediately. As the security guards arrived to arrest him, Veltarin felt something he had not experienced in years. Relief. The weight of his 10-year lie was finally gone, but his final surprise came 3 months later. Veltarin was sitting in a prison cell when the door opened. A guard stepped aside, and High Admiral Kexthul walked in. The Admiral looked older, more tired than before. The war is over, Kexthul said without introduction. Did we win? There was no victory, only survival. The Hegemony Council voted to end hostilities with human forces. The Admiral sat down on the simple chair across from Veltarin's cell. Your recording was educational. Veltarin said nothing. The humans sent a delegation to negotiate peace terms. Their leader was a young woman named Su Jin Wu. She said her father once met a hegemony officer who helped her people escape a massacre. Kexthul looked directly at Veltarin. She said that officer proved not all hegemony citizens were monsters. She said her father taught her that even enemies can choose to do the right thing. The cell door unlocked with a soft click. You are free to go, Commander, with full pardon. The human delegation specifically requested it. Velterran stood up slowly. What will happen now? Now we learn to live with the consequences of our choices. The humans have established their own territory. They will defend it fiercely, but they will not attack us unless we attack them first. The Admiral stood as well. They seemed to prefer peace to revenge, even after everything we did to them. As they walked out of the prison together, Kexthul asked one final question. Do you regret anything, Velterran? If you could go back 10 years, would you change what you did? Velterran thought about all the hegemony soldiers who had died because of his false report. He thought about all the human families who had been destroyed before peace was finally achieved. He thought about the children who had grown up in war, instead of safety. I regret everything, sir. Every choice I made. Every day I stayed silent. Every life that was lost because I was a coward when courage was needed. They reached the exit of the prison. Outside, transport ships were preparing to carry former prisoners back to their homes and families. But, Velterran continued, I am glad that some of those children survived. I am glad they grew up to be stronger than we ever imagined. And I am glad they chose to show us mercy when we deserved none. He looked up at the stars where human and hegemony ships now traveled the same space lanes in peace. I was ordered to witness humans in battle. I thought I was recording their defeat. Instead, I recorded the birth of the strongest species in the galaxy. And now, I live with regret. Not because they won, but because it took so long for them to teach us how to be better than we were. Commander Velterran boarded his transport and returned to his home world, carrying with him the memory of the bravest people he had ever known. And every day for the rest of his life, he would remember that courage is not about being unafraid,